Okay, this is our second episode of Gift of Gabs, and I have with me today April Rimpley. And I don't want to mess this up, but I understand Vice President of HR. Is
Yep,
that
Senior Vice President of Human Resources. Yep.
okay? Can you can you start with sort of your background and your education and sort of how you got to where you are?
Sure. So my undergrad is actually in business and psychology. And then I got a teaching degree for secondary education. And way back when that happened, it was actually kind of hard to get a job. So you're really willing to move or look for a job wherever. And so while I was considering how to find a long-term teaching job, I actually started working for the company I work for now, Ameritas Life Insurance Corp, as temp to hire. So back in 1998, there were a lot fewer jobs compared to the workforce that was available. And even though you had a college education, you were willing to go ahead and start as a temp to hire. And my thought was I would kind of try it and see if I liked it, but then I might go ahead and try to get into the teaching system and see what that was all about. But I had that psychology and business background. I also had a lot of undergrad classes in biology. So my first dream, which some people that listen to this podcast might have the same thing that's happened or will happen. You have this sort of idea of who you'll become, and then you start down a path and you like where it takes you and you kind of change things. But my first dream was to actually be a physiological anthropologist and work with
Oh, wow.
primates. And I do work with primates, but it wasn't really quite the way I thought.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
that's
yeah.
so does everyone start as a temp anime?
Not in this day and age. So
Yeah.
with we have very low unemployment rates, but we also have such a brain drain going on in Nebraska. So we most of our jobs are full-time regular hires. We still have some temp workers that we bring in, but it's not nearly like it was back then.
Right. I know I was at Shadron State and I started there in 88 and around 91 or 92 I did some work with Kay Orr when she was the governor. And that was what they were talking about was brain drain from
Yeah.
Nebraska. And so that's still true. I think that's kind of true everywhere with smaller states, population wise. But um, yeah, I knew about the teaching
Mhm.
degree. I didn't know about the business or psychology or
Yeah.
any of that. So uh, tell me, I should know this, and I guess I could pretend I know this, and I'm asking for the audience, but what does Emeritus do exactly? I always call it Emeritus Insurance, but I don't know exactly what they do.
Yeah, so we do life insurance and annuities and disability insurance for individuals. And then on our group side through employers, we offer dental, vision, and hearing care. And then we also offer retirement plans through employers. Um,
So did you go from the temp job to working in HR?
no, I went from the temp job to working in customer service. And then actually I got into the training department because of my teaching background.
Hmm.
So I did training for a couple of years, and then really, I think we were growing through acquiring other blocks of business. And then a few people were retiring, things were moving around a bit. So I got an opportunity to apply for a manager job. And then I got into management, and we're just doing a lot of different interesting things in that ancillary benefit line of business. So a lot of white label products and a lot of just getting little blocks of business that maybe other insurance companies didn't want when the dental industry was consolidating a bit. And that it just was so interesting and so enriching. So that kind of became my career path then for quite some time. And I ended up being the vice president of our customer connections area, which was more of a service and operations area. And then in 2017, I moved over to lead our HR team.
Okay. Okay. What's white label?
So it's when we're doing the back office processing and potentially even underwriting and creating some products and filing those for other insurance companies that want to offer the products, but they don't want to have the operational cost associated with it. So they can offer bundled products to their customers, but not actually do all.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So are all of your employees in Lincoln?
They are not, nope. So we have a little over 1,200 people in the state of Nebraska. And I'd say probably 800 to 900 of those are in Lincoln. And then we have another 1,300 across the company or the country, with our second largest location being Cincinnati, Ohio. And there's about 500 people there. And then we have San Antonio, Texas, and then Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, wow.
Mhm. Yeah, and then quite a few, like we have a lot of employees also in Florida, and then we have some group distribution offices all over the United States that are kind of regional. So I think when we shut down for COVID, we had 39 locations, but a lot of those were
Right.
really small sales offices.
Well, I was gonna ask you that a little
Mhm.
later, but since you brought it up, how did COVID change how, your job or how the company changed?
It changed HR's job a lot. So I would say the good and the bad was we certainly didn't have downtime. So we were the first company in Lincoln, I think, to close. So back when that happened in March of 2020, we worked with the Department of Health. So I think we had a very strong community partnership, and that was nice. But at that point, nobody really knew the severity of the virus. So when we had a case on site, we did have special cleaning and things done. And once we closed down, then we did not come back for quite some time unless the job that was being done was on site, which usually was our mail and print room or our facilities team. So that's only 8% of our total staff, but everyone else could do their job from home. And so we have a really big internship program that happened in March. We were starting to onboard our interns, and actually a lot of them were our saving grace in helping to get the equipment out that people needed. So people could come and pick up the equipment that they needed. And then if someone didn't know how to set their equipment up, the person from IT would help them do that. And so we were remote. Some of us started to come back like in June of 21 intermittently, but we rolled back in totally in February of 22. So we were out of the office for almost 2 straight years,
Wow.
and we still had very good results. So it was interesting that we were able to operate in a way that we really had never 100% contemplated. So we had thought about if we had to shut down the office for 72 hours, or if we had an outage, or we had
Right.
a hazardous material spill, but a lot of us had not contemplated, what if you have to go home and you cannot come back, like for a very long time. But we had the capability, and we quickly developed, I'd say, the way to collaborate and communicate by using tools that maybe we didn't use as often. We started using those every day.
So did a lot of the people that worked remote, did they never come back? Did they stay at remote?
One of the things that we did that I think took a lot of guts for our CEO at that point is we really started to make flexible work arrangements part of our strategy. So in June of 21, when some of us in the leadership team started to come back a little bit more often, we started to feel a little bit more safe. We're still wearing masks, but we could be in a big open room and not be, actually sitting side by side. We started to create a flex at Ameritas policy that would allow for remote, hybrid, or in-office work. And we applied a lot of HR tools, and then managers applied their view, and then associates applied their view as well to decide, will this job be hybrid or remote? And I think we have a few more remote than we planned, because we then all saw the turnover rate go way up. So in 22, that employment, as people started to think about what do they really want to do, we saw the employment market change, and we saw turnover rates increase. And at
Right.
that time, people were a little bit afraid of, well, what do we do? So we probably hired a few more remote people than we would have otherwise, or let somebody stay remote, or let somebody move to another location to keep the talent. So we do have about half of our associates are remote, and um, 42% are hybrid, which means they come in 3 days a week and then work at their remote location the other two. And then people that were in office, like those facilities and the mailroom and print operation teams, they still work on site pretty much every day.
So does that mean you have a lot of excess capacity for office
Well,
space or no?
we sold our Fallbrook location and we remodeled, which also I think sort of it took a lot of guts to commit to this new arrangement. So everybody's workspace is totally different, and we consolidated 2 of our buildings back together. And I'd say we're continuing to look at the other locations, and if they have, if they have occupancy or not, and what does, do we need a smaller location? Should we have people be remote? What looks like the right answer for that talent market? So we are evaluating that, but we really have those 4 talent hubs that we try to hire within driving distance of those hubs, so that if we even had a regional, like if you had a regional training, or like a few weeks back, one of our units had their first learning summit, which was like a 2-day event. And so if you could bring people in, but it's not flying everybody across the country, it's a little bit more manageable for
Yeah,
their time and for the money.
yeah, that makes sense. It feels like, I feel like the companies they didn't realize that that would work at all, having
Right.
somebody
Yeah.
off-site. And I was, at the time when COVID hit, I was teaching at Concordia, and we never shut down.
Mhm.
The classes are small, and so we had rooms where we would spread the students out, and everybody was wearing masks, and it made it a little harder to talk,
Right.
to the class, but it was nice. I mean, I felt a lot better, and I kind of feel like I got COVID before they knew what it was, because
Mhm.
the first week of that semester I was really sick, and they thought I thought it was bronchitis, and I went to a doctor, and he said, I tested you for bronchitis and you don't have it, so I don't know what this is. He said, I'm going to treat it like bronchitis, but so he gave me stuff that usually takes it away in a day or two, but it lasted about 10 days or 2 weeks, and it was just kind of miserable for that time.
Yeah.
And it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that that the first announcement of it came out.
Hmm.
And but I know, like UNL, I felt like those kids really got shortchanged, the ones that were graduating that
Yes.
didn't really have a last semester.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was, and I don't think, other than small schools, probably every school kind of faced that. I know the high schools even
Yes.
ran into that. Oh,
Yeah. It was such a strange time, and I think people didn't realize how long it was going to go on. So we felt really lucky that we sort of rolled out this assessment, and then we created workplace arrangement agreements so that everybody understood, like, if this is your agreement, this is what it means. Like, you have the same work to do. You have to be able to meet the same demands of the
right.
job.
So
And that helped.
do you find people more productive, less productive, about the same when they're
Um,
working remote?
what we find is we probably should have better productivity measures
Yeah,
to find out what that means, because I think you hear a mixed bag. The concern I have had is that, do we have a lot more back and forth in writing versus discussions to resolve things? So everybody thinks they're getting the same amount of work done, but are we actually taking things to fruition in the same time? Now, our results have been very good. And even the results of the workforce coming in, a lot of my peers have said things like, well, we still have a whole bunch of people that just refuse to come in. And we did those agreements before we really rolled people back. And so we haven't had the resistance. There's still
well,
some people that don't understand why their arrangement is hybrid versus remote, and a little bit of that. But for the most part, we've had very little disruption, where a lot of my peer groups, we've talked about, it's harder when you didn't have the agreement. You just let the local manager kind of figure it out within the team. And then, you just get a lot of different results that way.
Yeah, we, in some of my classes, we spent some time talking about, whether people were productive or not at home and showing videos, YouTube videos and things about, managers saying, well, these people were great and these people were, watching TV or,
Yep.
drinking wine or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you have to be very in touch and know what's going on that day. And certain jobs that's easier than others. But
Because
you have to have good measures of what is productivity.
yeah, I actually sort of retired in 2018, and then 2 years ago, one of my former Chadron State students was vice president of a tribal college up in Winnebago.
Mhm.
She asked me if I would help them. Uh, so for those last 2 years, I've been teaching on Zoom for them. I just stopped last month. I just retired because I want to spend more time on this.
Mhm.
It was different. It was better than online classes. I don't really like those, but it wasn't the same as being in class.
Yeah.
And I feel like workers probably are the same in the same boat. Like 'cause you're never with any coworkers. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess you
for
could
some of them,
call
it's
them.
funny. Some of them, if you work like in a contact center and you're answering calls, it probably doesn't matter necessarily where you sit. But if the team environment matters, some of them have a different arrangement. But then some that do like underwriting, they talk to these sales offices.
Yeah,
So they kind of preferred because they're like, it doesn't really matter where I'm at. I just need to be on the phone talking to people or talking on, like we're on Zoom. Um,
right.
and so that's one thing that has been better though. Most of the calls now are video calls versus phone calls. So I think it depends on the job type and then it depends on the person. And I think that's the part that makes it tricky. Is some people self-regulate really well and they know how to
Mhm.
make sure they're giving themselves energy and doing the right things. And others, I think it can be harder for them to find that line and making sure they're staying disciplined or figuring out how to structure their work in whatever their work arrangement is so that it is
Right.
productive.
Yeah, for me, well, doing this, I sort of converted a spare bedroom into a
Yeah.
studio, and I get more done if I come and sit in the studio than if I'm sitting in the living room in
Mhm.
other distractions and stuff. But you guys have a pretty big internship program. Uh, is it for every department? Do you hire interns in every area?
It's almost every area. It depends on what they like to have. Some of them have rotation programs. There's hardly any area that doesn't have them. So we usually have about 80 interns that start in May of each year. So we just wrapped up kind of the summer internship program, but a lot of our interns work full time in the summer. And then during the school year, they work part time around their class schedule. So
Right,
this fall, we're going into recruiting and we know that we will recruit 65 new interns. And that
right,
should put us at around 90 next May to kind of kick off that class. So we usually go in the fall, recruit for December and May grads so that we have their replacements ready. And then what we try to create a very meaningful experience so that they aren't just, doing like mindless work. They are learning
mhm,
what it means to function in that area and actually creating work product.
yeah,
And that's the thing I think is great is I think the next generation's amazing in a lot of ways. I mean, some of the things that I have seen interns do, and they're just very professional, ready to go, engaged, wanting to work. And
mhm.
so I know every generation has this idea that either the one before or after them is, a problem. But I would say I have seen a lot of it. It's so fun to see what they end up doing for different projects.
Yeah, I kind of had the same impression because I feel like you're right. Every generation thinks the younger generation's lazy and not. And there was a stretch when I was teaching around 2000 where I almost felt that way for a couple years. But then in the last 10 or 15 years, the students that I've had have been, I'm not worried about,
Yeah.
the future now, like I
Mhm.
might have been before. And I will tell you too, when I retired from Concordia, just kind of to keep busy as I would drive on Lyft.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you made me look like I was important a couple years ago because I picked up two parents from Illinois and their daughter. She was visiting UNL,
Oh,
and she's an actuarial science student.
mm-hmm.
And I called you or texted you, and you found an internship for her. And
Oh.
and that was before she even came. I mean, she had just gotten accepted. It was February, I think, because she was here
Yep.
for some kind of training, and then they told her she was in, and I don't think she started until summer or something, but
Yes.
she
Yep.
loved it. And she's, I guess, about halfway through the program now. But I think it helps. And I still do a little bit of Lyft just because I've met so many people.
I
Uh,
bet.
I have this is the second episode, and I have 11 more people lined up, and three of those were just people that I met on Lyft. Just
Yeah.
meeting them up and driving and talking to them. And
Mm-hmm.
one was a lady Saturday night that her and her husband were here for a wedding, and uh, she owns her own business, but she does corporate event planning.
Oh.
So she's going to come on. But I have a pretty big variety. Allie Batenhorst and her sisters, I think, are going to come
Oh,
on.
that'll be fun.
And I may not get them now until after the season because they're practicing.
Yeah.
But they all played Division I volleyball, and then I have a D1 volleyball coach and a basketball coach, and so a little bit of sports, a little bit of business, and a couple artists that should be fun. Um, so what's the most challenging part of your job? Because when I was in college, HR were the people that you tried to get around and go talk to the person that was actually going to hire you. But
Sure.
but now because of all the regulations and training and everything, it's
Yeah.
gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in my time in the workforce, even that HR has really moved from a personnel department that you sort of had to deal with to somebody that is more of your trusted advisor. And so I think that's to me a privilege that you have to earn businesses wanting you at the table. So that was one thing I brought with me to HR is the fact I had worked in a business, was very positive, that I knew what it was like to be on that side of the house too. And a lot of the people that work on my team that, their professional careers have been very wide. And so I do think over time, the way that we use HR in a successful company has definitely evolved from a personnel department to somebody who understands like this is what we're trying to, these are our business objectives, this is what we're trying to accomplishment. And so these are the types of people that we're looking for, whether it be talent, skills, having internal drive to be curious if you're in a unit that's just starting up. And so figuring out who can help fit there, but we do everything from hiring to sitting, helping people with org structure, to creating facilitated workshops on learning certain concepts or skills. And then we do, of course, all of the benefit and welfare programs that we have. So
So
it's a lot. Yeah.
yeah, so the corporate training jobs that you had earlier come in handy.
Yes, that did
Yeah.
help. Yep. And we still have technical training out in the businesses, but that functional training like leadership development, soft skills, or basics for different software skills, that is, our core. And we now have a change management unit as well to help people as the nature of work is changing, because I think that's the thing that's the most interesting
Right.
is with more and more technology available to help you, jobs are changing in different ways at a faster rate than they used to.
Yeah, everything turns over quicker.
Yeah.
Technology,
So
technology.
keeping good people, like keeping them fresh and learning so that they don't get frustrated that a change has been made and they don't really know how to use the tool, or you don't want to say, well, they've never done this before. Well, how do we help them? Because again, in Nebraska, we don't have a plethora of workers.
How important do you think it is now compared to 20 or 30 years ago? How important is a college degree? Are you looking more for skill
Ooh.
sets or more for
I think it depends on the job. Like you mentioned, the actuarial science student, and that's one where you have to have it. So there's certain disciplines where you would still have to have it, but we actually did spend quite a bit of time a few years ago going through and making sure that we were only listing a college degree when it was for sure required, so that we weren't creating a barrier to entry. And we're recognizing when someone could be successful without it. So I think there are a lot of jobs where if you have some experience and you come in, or you're coming into an entry-level job, you don't necessarily need that college degree. And yeah, we are more interested in, are you curious? Are you engaged? Can you learn? Do you have adaptability? And what can you learn on the job?
So do any testing? Like when I first got out of college with my master's, I knew that I wanted to teach, but I also thought I was going to teach marketing and statistics, and I thought I needed to work in business a little bit before I taught because those were the best teachers that I had.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first came out, I applied for a job at, I think it was Metropolitan Life, and they made me take something called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory,
Mhm.
300 question personality profile. And I didn't really want the job. It was a sales job, but I needed a job. And so I went into it thinking, well, I'll answer these questions like a salesperson would answer these questions. But what they do in the test is they'd ask you the same question 4 or 5 different ways, and they were looking for consistency, and because you couldn't, that way you're not fooling the test.
Sure.
And I remember because back then they had to send it off, and it was a week later, and they
Mhm.
called me and they said, well, we don't think this is really the job that would suit you best. And and I said, well, I could have told you that a week ago, um, but I just needed a job.
Yeah.
And so I ended up taking a business job, but I also taught part-time. So I sort of started my teaching the same way you started, as a temp position. I started as an adjunct, and I think that's a lot of the way people get in now. But um, I feel, and I used to tell this to my students because I always taught at small schools and not big universities, is that name recognition for the school might matter to get you an interview, but once you've got the job, they only care about, can you do the job?
Right.
And now you also see a lot of schools which didn't exist when I was starting out teaching. Was there are a lot of schools that you can get a degree in human resources now. Wayne, I think, has one now. Um,
Yeah, at UNL, I actually am on the HR advisory board, which they only started a few years ago.
yeah. Um, so what do you think is the most rewarding thing about your job?
I think it actually is helping people individually, and then just the what you can offer to the organization. To me, those two things are, because helping there is some truth to helping one person that you get to know, but then seeing what you can do if you have consistent leadership training, if you have consistent assessments, if you have this consistency, it creates a culture. And I always call that the ecosystem for people to work in. And if that's a really good ecosystem, the power that that gives the organization is huge. But of course, you see that one win at a time, really, because it's very
Yeah,
hard to see the big stuff. Takes a bit to get, to take a hold.
I felt like, and I also tried to tell students this too, is that you have to do something that you want to go do when you wake up in the morning.
Yes.
And I was still like that. I mean, I taught for 41 years, and I still love being in class. I will admit I didn't love going to meetings or committees or any of that stuff anymore, but
Mhm.
if I ever did. But I being in class I liked as much as I did the first day. And it was, a lot of people have asked me, a lot of my friends have said, well, what do you, are you sad that you're not going to be doing it anymore? And I think without this, I would be.
Mhm.
But this is something new, and something I'd like to try and build. And I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of students keep in touch,
Yeah.
all all the way back to the early '90s. And so it's been fun to watch their careers progress, and a couple of them are coming on the show. I had one on last Friday, and that went up today. But
Battery low. Please
the
charge now.
uh-oh, I'm gonna lose my mic in a second. Um, well, let's kind of try and wrap this up a little bit.
Yeah,
I just have a few little crazy questions I wanted to
okay,
ask everybody.
yeah.
So the first one is, if you could spend a day with anyone, living or dead, who would it be?
Ooh, that is hard. I'm just gonna say Nadia Comaneci because I
Oh,
always loved the fact that she was the first person to get a perfect 10, and I think it'd be amazing to meet her in person.
yeah, I saw her at the Olympics in the crowd.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think
was
it
I
would
was
be
actually
perspective.
working for Chrysler as a test driver when she did that, and I was
Wow,
listening to it on the radio because we nobody could believe that someone
right.
could get a 10, but she would be cool to meet. The
Yeah.
second one is, if you could be any animal, what would you be?
Ooh, I think for sure I would probably be lowland gorilla.
Oh, that seems pretty powerful. Um, okay, what's the most interesting place you visited or would like to visit?
I think the most interesting place I have been is Iceland. And I would love to go to New Zealand. I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I've heard that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. I have a friend that I golf with that was stationed in Iceland for the Navy, and he
Mhm.
liked it. Next one is, if you had to eat one food every day for the rest of your life, what would you eat? Not just that food, but you had to have it at least once a day.
Yogurt.
Yogurt? I have
Yeah,
had yogurt. The
I love
first,
yogurt.
yeah, I do too. The first person said sushi, and I've never had sushi, but I'm allergic to shellfish, so I'm a little scared of
Yeah.
sushi. The last question, and then I'll let you go, is, if you could start a rumor about yourself, what would it be?
Oh, that you should get to know who I really am.
Oh, that's a good one. Because I feel like your job, you're sort of put in the middle. I mean, do you feel like
Yes.
sometimes the employees expect you to work for them and the management expects you to work for them, and you're kind of,
You can't, yeah, you can feel a little in the middle, and you also feel like you do recognize that with a job like this, you also have a great responsibility. And so sometimes it is hard to really get to know somebody because you can't maybe share everything interpersonally with them.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be difficult, but well, I'll let you go. I appreciate your time. I'm
Well, it
sure
was
I'll
so
be,
good to talk with you. I love
yeah,
that you're
you
doing
too.
this.
I'm sure I'll be talking to you with volleyball starting.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I have tickets for the red white scrimmage, but I don't have any others yet. I'm still on the waiting list for
Waiting
seat
list. I
tickets.
know they've been harder to get since they're so good.
Yeah, and I am gonna probably try to get a hold of you. Allie's coming back on September 29th because she transferred to USC
Uh-huh.
for grad school. So I'll try to
Yeah.
find some tickets for that. But and then her little sister Casey plays for SMU, and I thought SMU was coming here, and I talked to her dad and said, "Are you coming up for SMU?" And he texted me back and said it's in Dallas. So
Oh,
because they
very
were
good.
here last year, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I probably see you over there a
Yes, sounds
few
good.
times. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, take
Thanks,
care.
April.
Bye.
Bye.